Hello, and welcome back to Your Mocha is Hot with Faith. And today is going to be another one of those sort of like those little what I call rambles with Faith episodes. But more specifically, I think it's going to be about something that I don't think I've seen anybody talk about. At least not in regards to adults. So, found this podcast, this incredible podcast, and it was about ADHD. And I have lots of friends with ADHD, and it was so insightful and so interesting. It kind of inspired me a little bit to talk about something that, again, I don't think I see talked about often, which is neurodivergent friendships. And what do I mean by that? Well, the stereotype that you see when it comes to, and for this episode, I think I'm gonna talk on the subject matter of neurodiversity and these stereotypes that we see. So, first of all, let's define autism, let's define neurodiversity, let's define what that is. Because I one time asked somebody, I was like, okay, what do you think it means to be neurodivergent? Like, tell me what you think that means. And some people were like, well, I think it means somebody who was born with a brain that's neurologically different. And someone else was like, I've never even heard the term. What does it mean to be neurodivergent? And it's interesting to me. You would think, with how widespread the neurodivergent, movement has been in the last few years, that neurodiversity would be something that is a pretty hot topic. And so let's sort of like look at this. Now, let's look at the neurodiversity movement. Now, when you look at it on Wikipedia, it talks about it as if it's the autism rights movement only, or the autistic acceptance movement. And in Wikipedia, of course, we're just going to read off the little paraphrase here. It says, the autism rights movements, let's restart that. The autism rights movement, also known as the autistic acceptance movement, is a social movement within the context of disability rights that emphasizes a neurodiversity paradigm, viewing of the autism spectrum as a result of neurovariations in the human brain, rather than as a disease to be cured. And you're like, Faith, what's all that jargon and what does that mean and why should I care about it? Let's put it in layman's terms. The quote-unquote autism acceptance movement simply is asking that you see us as human. I'm going to let that sink in. I want you to look at me as human. I don't want you to look at my brain as a special need or a special case or a special education or blah, 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 special this, special that. No, I want you to look at me as human. It's a very, very, very simple concept. It's not that hard. So that's kind of what, so when you click on what is the neurodiversity movement, you often will get things related to autism. But I am here to tell you, and I'll get back to my little intro and tangent, little sort of ramble, that will delve into why the neurodiversity movement is so much more than just autism. It is not simply about those who are autistic, although we are the loudest voice. And I'm also going to preface this too. So, I'm autistic. I've talked about this before on the show. I'm on the spectrum as well. I do not speak for the entire spectrum. I don't. And I think that that's what a lot of people tend to get wrong, is that when you're talking about neurodiversity and what it means to be neurodivergent, you do not speak for the entire spectrum. Let's get that through our heads. I, Faith Jacobs, do not speak for the entire autism, what the hell? I, Faith Jacobs, do not speak for the entire autism spectrum. I speak to my own, because my journey is going to be different from your journey, and your journey is going to be different from my journey. So, with that in your heads, I can only speak from my perspective. And this is my perspective as someone who was a late diagnosis. I was diagnosed. How many years ago was I diagnosed? Gotta do a little bit of math, which I suck at. If you know me, you know that I have dyscalculia, which is a beautiful, rare. 1 in 5 people are diagnosed with it, and it affects time, money, mathematics, the passage of time, and numbers. I see numbers backwards, and mental math is really hard for me. So, I have to actually use a calculator. I still count on my fingers. And that is nothing to be ashamed about. Say it with me. Our disabilities and our learning difficulties are nothing to be ashamed about. Thank you. So trying to figure this out, because it's been so long. Okay, wait. So I was diagnosed about 4 years ago. And I was a late diagnosis. It was very late. Let's also get this right out the gate. Autism is something that you are born with. Period. Yep. Check. Print. There you go. Autism is something you are born with. So, I have been autistic my entire life. Getting the diagnosis just means we understand what's happening. And I was very lucky, and I know that I was very privileged to get a diagnosis, because I know so many who are not so lucky. So let's also acknowledge that. You are born with autism. Autism is not something that you can catch. It is not a disease. It is not something that can be passed on, to people, like things in the air, like a sickness in the air. Autism is not that. Also, vaccines don't cause autism. So, burn, throw away the match. I don't, I'm gonna, and that's a stance that I hold, is that vaccines don't cause autism. And that's a controversial take, and not one that I'm going to debate nor care to debate. It's truth is what it is. It's fact. So, with all of that out of the way, let's recap. Number 1, I don't speak for the entire neurodivergent community. I only speak to my journey. I was a late diagnosis. I was diagnosed 4 years ago. Autism is something you are born with. I am autistic, and I've been autistic, and the evidence is there that I was autistic in videos and other things in my life. So you really can't debate me. It's right there. It's right in front of your eyes. And number 4, vaccines don't cause autism. Science has been proven that the vaccines don't cause autism. The science proves it. And if you believe science, vaccines don't cause autism. Period. Check the gate. There we go. So with that, let's delve into what is neurodiversity and why it's more than just autism, and how that will all tie back to autism and friendship, and what I was talking about a little bit with that podcast about ADHD that I listened to. So let's dive into it. So, autism, again, like the neurodiverse. Okay, so let's again, we're gonna read this from Wikipedia. Neurodiversity, or ND, as and from this point on, if I am saying the abbreviation ND, I am saying neurodivergent. And if I'm saying NT, I am saying neurotypical. So NT is neurotypical, and neurodiverse is ND. Any variations of that is, ND always refers to someone who is neurodivergent. Okay, so ND refers to variations in the human brain and cognition, for instance, in sociability, learning, attention, mood, and other mental functions. This term was first coined in 1998 by sociologist Judy Singer, who helped popularize the concept along with journalist Harvey Bloom. It situates human cognitive variation in context of biodiversity and politics of minority groups. This view arose out of the autism rights movement, which I think is where we get the idea that neurodiversity is just autism, because many autistics are the ones who tend to, as a community, and when I say we, I'm not speaking for the community, but I'm saying as a community, what I have seen being in the neurodivergent community in some ways, is that, because I consider myself an advocate for myself, and an advocate for at least neurodivergent inclusion, because I'm a firm believer in that. And if you listen to any of my shows, and if you listen to Tir Nanak, if you listen to Chaotic Idiots, if you just looked at my work, I am always inclusive of those. I have actors who are neurodiverse who are in the lead. How many TV shows and animated things, can you say that there are actual neurodivergent individuals in lead roles? Known. I'm not saying that they, after the fact, but I mean when the subject matter is actually neurodiversity. How many times can you say that there are neurodivergent leads? Answer me that. You can't. Half the time it's neurotypicals playing autistics, and sometimes they do it respectfully. Sometimes. Not all the time. You do have cases where it's not respectful at all. And I can talk about that, but my whole point is 9 times out of 10, in every show you watch, it is about a severe autistic individual, and then, as I see many autistics in the autism community say, it's about a cis Caucasian autistic boy who is so severe that he doesn't have a social life and he doesn't have friends. He's a savant. The one exception to this, I think, is Danny Pudi in Community, and he's everybody universally agrees that him, and I would also add to that list Gary from Alphas, is a good example, are two examples of neurotypical actors playing autistic individuals who actually listened to the autism community. But they are the only exceptions. I do not count Freddie Highmore in the role of the Good Doctor, and I do not count the actor who played Sam in Atypical. Those two shows are messes, in my opinion. So, like, I have strong feelings about both those shows. And we also don't talk about Rain Man. Dear God, let's not talk about Rain Man. But, so those are three bad examples. There are good examples, but they're few and they're far between. So the whole point to that, again, little tangent, is when we think of neurodiversity, we think of autism. And that's good, but it's only one branch in the neurodivergent movement. So again, this view arose out of the autism rights movement as a challenge to prevailing views that certain things currently classified as neurodevelopmental disorders are inherently pathological. Builds on the social model of disability, in which disability arises out of societal barriers, interacting with individual differences rather than people being disabled simply as a result of having impairments. The subsequent neurodiversity paradigm has been controversial among disability advocates, with opponents arguing it risks downplaying the suffering associated with some disabilities and calls for the acceptance of some things some would wish to see treated. Now, that's an interesting point, because I feel like neurodiversity and neurodivergent acceptance are simply asking that the things that you neurotypicals would wish to see cured and fixed are not things that need to be fixed. And I see advocates, and I see people, whether they have autism, or they have ADHD, or they have dyspraxia, dyslexia, dyscalculia, whether no matter what the disability, I am always, always, always seeing the same thing. Will you accept me as I am? Because, it's like, why can we, here's an example. A neurotypical person loves sports. That's their favorite thing in the world. They love sports. And we accept that as normal. Why then, if some autistic individual happens to really love, let's take a TV show, for example. If they really, really love, I'm looking around my room right now looking for something. Spider-Man. Okay. Hypothetical example. Let's say an autistic person really likes everything to do with Spider-Man. And for whatever reason, neurotypical society decides, no, you can't like Spider-Man. That's weird. That's for 6-year-olds, hypothetically speaking. Okay, why is that wrong? Aren't sports for just grown children? And again, this is a way far out there example. It's ridiculous even by normal standards, but it's just a hypothetical. It's like, okay, well, why can't I like Spider-Man? I don't understand. If you can like sports and you can enjoy this, why can't I also enjoy this? Why can't I enjoy all the parts that make me myself as much as you enjoy the parts that make you yourself? And that's the problem. That's the problem that I see when it comes up to neurodivergent examples and neurodivergent interactivity, is it always seems to be, what I hear and what I read is that the neurotypical interactivity is like, why are you this way? And we're over here just kind of like, because I need to know why. If that made any sense. It's like, because I am. Why are you like that? If we went around looking at neurotypicals being like, "Oh, well, why did they do that? That doesn't make any sense. I would never do that." Because your perspective and our perspective is so completely different. There are threads. There are autistic advocates who do threads and threads and threads about what it means to try and conform to the neurotypical societal norms and how that is so weird to neurodivergent brains. There are, I'll use an example. Okay, I have friends who have ADHD. And let's talk about this a little bit in conversation. So in a relationship, and this is I think the saddest thing to me that I have learned in doing research about ADHD. So friendship. What is a friendship? Well, it's two people who come together with commonalities and interests. Simple, right? Great. And what do those commonalities and interests often require? Communication. Guess what's hard for somebody who has ADHD? Communication, object permanence, and, memory, working memory. So I have friends who have ADHD, and let me tell you first what I love about them. Because, shocker, there are actually good things to those who have ADHD. It's amazing. I know, it's so hard to believe, isn't it? That there are actually good things about these people. And if you just saw it and you were able to look past some of the things that are caused because of, their neurological difference, I think you'd realize that what you have in these people are actually good friends. So here's what I love about them. Number one, they're honest. They're honest, they're blunt, and it's refreshing. From what I've seen and what I've heard when it comes to neurodivergents interacting with neurotypicals, they don't like honesty. They don't like you to be blunt. They don't like you to tell the truth. And it's a problem. It's honestly funny, but because we're over here being honest with each other all the time, and we're not getting mad at each other. Number two, my friends with ADHD are funny. They are so funny to the point that I belly laugh. They're kind. You might not, you might not see it because sometimes you're like, gee, that was a little brutal, that was a little blunt, but you're like, but they're also kind in their own way. They're incredibly inclusive. Number one, and they're intelligent, they're creative, they're encouraging. They're all these amazing things, and yet the first thing you look up when you look up ADHD is the stereotype that people with ADHD are stupid, or that they're aloof, they're forgetful, they don't care, and it's all from a neurotypical perspective. Like I said with the friendship thing, when it comes to friendship, what's the one thing that is required? Communication. Again. And what's hard for somebody with ADHD? An attention span. It's not because they don't care. It's because they have a million other things that are going on in their heads. Which is why their brains are so beautiful. They are not broken. They are beautiful. And I will not stand for anybody looking at my friends or looking at people who I interact with on a daily basis who have ADHD as people who are broken, because I think that's BS, and I don't stand for it. So again, they are made so wonderfully. They have their struggles and their obstacles, yes. They have their imperfections and their flaws, yes, but they are also wonderful human beings with the most brilliant minds that I think anyone would be lucky to get to know. if you just weren't so focused on the things that they can't do in your mind, on the things that you think that they should do. You think that they should be on time. I have a friend who has ADHD, and she's always running late when we have plans. But guess what? I don't care. I don't care. Does she run late? Yes. Do I care? No. She'll get there. She'll get here. She will get to me when she gets to me. It is not a personal attack. It is not a I didn't care about our plans or being on time. It's just that everything kind of hit me all at once and I'm running a little behind. That's okay. Why does it matter? It doesn't. And, or I have somebody who I know who they were doing something with me and it wasn't processing. So I had to say it a different way in order for it to make sense. That's okay. They're not stupid because they just needed me to find a different route in order for their brain to understand the information I was giving them. It doesn't make them stupid. It doesn't make them unintelligent. As a matter of fact, they say the most brilliant things sometimes, and I go, wow, that made a lot of sense to me. I didn't think about it that way. I value them. In friendship with ADHDers and neurotypicals, which is the saddest thing that I think I've ever read in my life, it was like, by the way, you're friends, and if you're neurotypical and, you're friends with somebody who is ADHD, you might think that they don't care, and at some point they'll just kind of drift away, and I'm just sitting there going, wow. Well, no wonder why so many people who have ADHD are guarded and self-sabotaging and so have such low self-esteem in themselves, because everyone and their mother has pounded them and been like, you forgot this. You didn't do this. It's all your fault. It wasn't intentional. You just don't have the patience to understand it wasn't intentional. And I'm not gonna lie, as someone who's autistic, that really kind of miffs me a little bit. The more I read, the more I see, the more I learn, the more it just completely and utterly miffs me as a person. Because I'm like, I could never imagine myself looking at one of my friends who deals with ADHD and going, gee, you really forgot about this, didn't you? And you really didn't care, didn't you? Because it's ridiculous and it's petty. And it just, it irks me. Because I'm like, I did that too. Funny how that works, isn't it? And so that's what I'm getting at. This is what I'm getting at when I'm saying that neurodiversity isn't just about autism. And maybe I'm different to most neurodivergent advocates and people who understand their neurodiversity, because a lot of the stories and a lot of the things that I see so many of these neurodivergent advocates sharing is the fact that it's often, they're often sitting there and they're like, I want better representation. That's nice, sweetheart. How about you make it? Because the neurotypicals out there who run the world are not going to make the representation that you so desire. Trust me, I spent years waiting for someone like me to come onto that scene, to come onto that screen, to come onto an animated TV show, to just exist in media. Guess what? I had to do it myself. Why do you think Chaotic Idiots exists? Why do you think the character of Jacob and the character of Edgar exist? because I was tired of sitting there and listening to advocates do nothing. And I was like, do you want to say it or do you want it done? Reminded me of something that Troy Baker said. He was like, it's either time to commit and do something or shut up. So I committed and I did something. And within the span of 3 or 4 weeks, I had 7 people come to me and be like, wow, I relate to Jacob so much. And I'm like, this is what happens when you, the neurodivergent individuals, start putting the money where your mouths are and you actually do it. You actually create that representation that you are so desiring. I do not care if you think there are barriers. There are not. Nothing is stopping me from creating Chaotic Idiots. Nothing is stopping me from creating Tear to Knock. Nothing, nothing, nothing. I have a mic. Actually, fun fact. I didn't have a mic when I created Chaotic Idiots. Did that stop me from recording? Hell no. I recorded without a mic for half of season 1. Was the sound quality great? No. Do I care? Maybe a little bit in this instance. However, I did it. I learned to edit. I wrote a 195-page script in 5 days. I hyperfixated. But I did it. I cast everybody by myself and with some help from some friends. I cast everybody. They might have helped me find the people. I was the one doing the casting. I edit, I direct, I acted, I wrote, I produced. I found the music. I bought a mic. I bought a headset. I took the steps to create representation that I wanted. Was it easy? No. Did I do it? Yes. Did I want to quit? You bet I did. But as someone who is neurodivergent herself and looked at this platform and was like, gee, I see so many things about mental health and mental health advocacy, and I see all the same stories just with a different coat of paint. I think it's time that we made waves for neurodivergent representation. I'm going to start it. Come hell or high water, I'm starting this. And this all ties back around to the neurodiversity movement. I made it very clear with this project that what I was casting for and who I was casting in what roles. Edgar has a neurodivergent actor. Leroy has a neurodivergent actor. Malachi? Adar has a neurodivergent actor. Every single character has somebody who falls into the spectrum of either disability or neurodiversity. There are a few exceptions for neurotypical actors on this project. Callista, disabled actor. Jacob, me. I'm autistic. I'm not afraid to talk about it either. So my whole point is, they all fall into the neurodivergent spectrum. You will never see a neurotypical, I won't allow it, playing a character who has a disability. Half my audience, those with neurodivergencies. It just is. And the whole point of this is just to say, it's interesting. If I didn't have the friend group that I have, and I wasn't seeing the stories that I'm seeing unfold in those beautiful friendships, and seeing, seeing them even create their own representation, it wouldn't be my passion for this and my desire for neurodiversity and acceptance and understanding wouldn't be what it is if I didn't have the experiences that I have. And there's a lot of layers to this. Like I was saying on the subject of ADHD, it's a sad fact to me that I can't think of a single character with confirmed ADHD. And I wish that I wasn't the only person or feeling like the only person who cared about this, because I have a little character in the works who has ADHD, and his sister has autism. I don't know what story I'll do with them, but I know that they're important because I had millions of people with ADHD like that post and be very willing to talk to me about their own stories. I don't know who I need to put this in front of in order to get you to understand that it's needed. Because a billion people were like, yes, this is what we need. The narrative needs to change. We need to have more representation. You can't have diversity and inclusion without considering neurodiversity and disability. And it's not even considered. It's not. When you think of diversity and inclusion, you think, this is not a snub, you think women, and you think ethnical differences, which is, again, not a bad thing. We need more people of color, and we need more females. I think that's great. But what you also need to remember is that we need more people of neurodiversity as well. We need people of all able-bodied types. And people with disabilities are not, how do I say this? I don't like the term differently abled or special abilities. I will say that right off the bat. Those are very offensive terms. But people with disabilities are not incapable. They're just not. They are as capable as the other, as Joe, who has 2 working legs and can shut off the coffee pot that he hears in the background of like a restaurant. They are capable individuals. Just because they're disabled does not mean that they are not capable. Just because I dealt with epilepsy and I deal with autism does not mean that I am not capable. And my gosh, 2 years. It's been 2 years since I crafted Chaotic Idiots. And it's been me who has helmed this. By myself, with my cast. Most people quit after 10 episodes. It's interesting. There seems to be this idea that there are barriers preventing people from doing things. That's advocacy, people, right there. I have produced, I want to say 47, 48 episodes. I am close to 50. I have produced 50 episodes of a podcast in 2 years. And it is a well-done podcast. Just because I don't have the backing of studio money, and I don't have studio equipment, and I don't have X, Y, and Z, does not mean that it is a badly produced podcast. I have people from the UK to Texas to California who are part of this podcast, and they believe in it. so it's worth something because they believe in it and I believe in it. So if you think that you need billions and billions and billions of dollars and the best of equipment in order to make something, in order to get your representation, in order to bring neurodiversity to the forefront, you are sorely mistaken. Because oftentimes it's the people with money who fail. And I'm not talking the indie world, I'm not talking the independent world of projects, of filmmaking, of television shows. Those are the ones who have been down and dirty. And they know what it's like to suffer and struggle and wish for things that were better. I'm talking about the higher ups. I'm talking about the people in the studios and the corporations who say this about diversity and that about diversity, and they're pulling the plug on things that are about diversity. And I'm not going to get into that because I don't have the experience and don't have the perspective to talk on those things. But I will say that I feel like the things that often get pulled often come from the people who have the money. And the things that tend to thrive and then get turned into incredible things later on down the line are the people who have been ignored and left behind. So if you want to talk about representation, that's cute. If you want to have representation, you make it. You get that mic. You get behind that camera. I don't care. You don't need some expensive camera. You get your phone. You get your cheap tablet. You get your cheap PC. You get your recording software. You get a mic if you have it. If you don't, do it anyway. That's neurodiversity. That's how neurodiversity gets in front of things. It's not with the big budgets and the big backings and the big names and no. It's with the people that the industry allows to fall through the cracks. It's with the people that society allows to fall through the cracks. That's what it is. That's what it's always been. And you have people and people and people buying into the lie. And if they just did this, then they would get heard. I'd love to have a big budget. I would. I'd love to be able to turn Tuna Knock and Chaotic Idiots into more than what they are right now, but I can't do that right now. So I'm going to work with what I have, and I'm not going to quit because I can't do crowdfunding, or I can't get this in front of some big name and have them sponsor me. It's a great dream. It may be even a goal, but it's not attainable right now. You're like, Faith, how does this all tie into the neurodiversity movement and ADHD and your whole friendship thing? Well, welcome to the Tangent Express. Welcome to this is a podcast by a neurodivergent, and we're on the Tangent Express right now. This all ties into one singular fact. I saw something today. It sort of set off a fire in me. I was looking up something because I was quite curious. I was looking for like autism. Ironically, this all came about because I was looking for autism and ADHD friendships. And I was going to talk about that solely. And I talked about that a little bit in the last segment, but at the same time, oh, this is interesting. What's this? Why every person with ADHD needs an autistic friend. That's cute. That's a cute title. I'd like to read that. I wonder if it's good or if, it's positive. This comes from medium.com, Artfully Autistic. So, okay, it's actually sounding really good so far. Sorry, I wanted to look at that because that didn't pop up earlier whenever I was looking for autism and ADHD friendships. But yeah, this all kind of started because I saw something that was like, most autistics, they didn't have any real close friends. That is complete lie. That is a complete lie. Now, I know that there are autistic individuals. Now, let me preface this gently and say there are autistic individuals out there who are what we call high support need. No more low functioning, high functioning labels. Get that out of your vocabulary, please. They are what we call high support need and low support need. I'm low support need, although I do have my challenges and my struggles with my autism. Um, there I am mainly low support need. I can feed myself. I can get dressed by myself. As a matter of fact, I have a sandwich right now that I should be eating, but I'm talking into a mic. And then but I can get a shower by myself. I can dress myself. I know how to take care of my teeth. You know, I can do all the basic necessities that one needs in order to care for themselves hygienically. Okay? I can go into a store by myself and browse around. I can pay for things by myself. I have dyscalculia, and sometimes I have to have friends double check my money, but just to make sure I did it right. But most of the time, I'm pretty good about that. I'm pretty good at paying for things by myself. Again, I can boil water, at least. Not the best at cooking, but I know how to at least do maybe French toast, and I know how to do eggs, and, I know how to do some basic things. I do. I know how to do basic things. It's not that hard. But I'm also very blessed and I'm very privileged to be able to do all the things that I've just listed. I just am. I also have friends. Shocker! I have friends. I have 7 of them. They are beautiful people. And I have 7 close friends. I have lots of colleagues and mentors and other people in my life. It's amazing. But I have 7 close friends. And they're good. And they keep me honest. And they teach me things. It's amazing, right? Yet, the kid with autism did not have any friends. Sweetheart, you're talking about, again, I understand that there's the connotation about the whole social thing and social cues, and you can believe what you want about that. But, I would say that I communicate pretty well, pretty decently. Maybe I don't communicate in the way that you think that I should communicate, but I communicate in the way that I know how. And you either accept that communication and accept the way I communicate is different and unique to me, or you don't. And I don't talk to those people anymore who did that, I don't. So here's the thing, again, people ask, can you be friends with an autistic person? Oh my god. Yeah. Again, stuff like that is very, very offensive. Do people with autism have empathy? Yes. I have hyper empathy. Dear goodness. So that is the thing. I don't see. So that's what I did. That's what I was looking up this morning that kind of caused this little tangent thing here, was the idea that It was like, people with autism don't really have any close friends. I'm like, that's a lie. The picture you're looking at right now, those are my friends. And I love them. Those are my friends. Every single person that you're seeing there. They're a friend, they're a colleague, they're people who I love. The little image, at least, the Spotify version should have this image. Those are my friends. I know them. Wow, shocker. Someone with autism has a social life. You don't see that in, your autism shows. Or again, friends with ADHD might seem as if they don't care, and at some point, you as the neurotypical in the relationship are just going to fade away. Again, no wonder why us neurodivergents are trying to advocate for the things that we have. Because, shocker, we actually want relationships. Wow. Insert Owen Wilson here. Wow. It just... Is it such a shocker? Is it just a shocker to you? That sometimes we have relationships. And that we actually understand each other. And it's not in the same way as you. That's why the neurodiversity movement, to me, we need to start advocating that it's so much more than just autism. Because the truth be told, the bottom line of this all over the place kind of episode is the fact that, do you want to know what neurodiversity encompasses? Do you really want to know? I can tell you. Let's see. What is neurodiversity? I'll tell you what it encompasses. Let's look at the types. Let's look at the types of neurodiversity. And this is coming from something called, this is the first definition that popped up. There are several recognized types of neurodivergent. Autism spectrum disorder, dyslexia, dyscalculia, epilepsy, hyperlexia, dyspraxia, ADHD, obsessive compulsive disorder, Tourette syndrome. Neurodiversity is so much more than just autism. It's not just autism. It makes up everything. It's... And so if you're wondering, what is neurodiversity? What is it? Neurodiversity is simply it's just an umbrella term. The natural diversity, this is beautiful actually. Neurodiversity, the natural diversity of human brains. Neurodiversity paradigm, the philosophy of neurodiversity. The neurodiversity movement is a social justice movement. Neurodivergent, a person whose brain functions functioning differs from what's considered neurotypical. And neurodiverse is a group of people with different types of brains. That's just what it means to be neurodivergent. That's what it means to be neurodiverse. That's all they mean. It is an umbrella term for those of us who were born with what I listed. And there's so much more. There's so many more. Those are only just 7. There's so much more than just that. So much more. Again, there's more. There's dysgraphia. Let's see. What's this? I can't pronounce this. Mears-Arlene syndrome, Tourette syndrome, synthesia, anxiety. I didn't know that. Again, like, what makes someone neurodivergent is anything that, makes you neurologically different. Typically, it's the aforementioned that I mentioned before, but, like, there's such a big, there really is a big sort of, like, list of things that make someone neurodivergent. And what's important is that we know that it's not just autism. We don't talk about that enough. We just don't. We don't talk about how someone with ADHD is considered neurodivergent. We don't talk about how somebody with dyspraxia is considered neurodivergent. We don't talk about dyscalculia. Heck, dyscalculia is so unknown. There are people who are like, what in the world is dyscalculia? And I'm like, it's a number. It's like dyslexia for numbers, basically. We just don't talk about it enough. It's fine and beautiful that there's been this resurgence in the autism community, but I feel like that those autistic advocates also need to be advocating for their other neurodiverse friends. I certainly do. I love my neurodivergent friends. I told you, I listed all the things I love about my friends with ADHD. I love them. They're the best people in the world to me. Because any flaw or imperfection that they may have is beautiful to me. It's like Entrapta said, your imperfections are beautiful. They're beautiful. You're not broken. You're completely and absolutely beautiful. You really are. And if anyone ever makes you feel otherwise, they're jerks. And they don't know you. They don't want to know you. They only see what they can't control. And what they can't even fathom. And they just, to kind of like continue my point about, again, you're beautiful. I mean that. Like, if somebody in your life, if it was your neurotypical peers, if your neurotypical peers looked at you, and because of your neurological differences that made you neurodivergent, if they so much as looked at you and was like, oh, they're too much because they're hyperactive, or they're too loud, or oh my gosh, this terrible thing happened to me, and then this person over here made it all about themselves because they were talking about how they went through this thing. Sweetheart, that's called neurodivergent empathy. We relate to you through similar experiences. It's not self-centered, it's neurodivergent empathy. And you can ask any neurodiverse advocate. They talk about it all the time. It was like, Faith is too much. Faith was too mean. Faith is so... I had stupid children looking at me being like, oh my gosh, you're so mean. Ba 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 ba. It's like, I'm mean because I'm quiet and introverted and I don't want to talk to you right now. That's me being mean? Sweetheart, if that's me being mean, you've not seen me get mean. And it was like, You must be too much because you have all this great energy. Or you must be rude because you're so um you must be rude and blunt and you don't care because you forgot about this thing that you were supposed to do, and therefore I'm going to make you feel terrible that you forgot to do this thing. Again, that's neurotypicalism. They can't help it. They just don't understand anybody else outside their own perspective. That's what we call bitter neurotypicalism. It's a very sad state of affairs. And if I'm laughing, it's because I saw some meme about it. It was like, oh, neurotypicalism. Let's raise awareness. And it was totally like, it was totally neurodivergent humor. It was it was like, oh, those poor neurotypicals. Let's raise awareness about neurotypicalism and what you can do. It was like that very cheesy, stupid, it was a parody of like the neurotypical who like tokenizes the neurodivergence in their life and is like, you're so inspiring. It's stuff like that. Again, like you can be an ally. Now let me like center myself and just be like, look, it's not, how do I say this? It is not that you as the neurotypical can't be an ally to those who are neurodivergent. I have a friend. She deals with POTS syndrome. And she's not neurodiverse. So I mean, she's disabled, but she's neurotypical in every sense of the word. Yet, she's been a good friend to me for a lot of years, and she actually took the time to understand me. So she's one of the rare exceptions, but also, she too has also been treated as an outcast for her own disability and misunderstood, for a lot of things and a lot of reasons. And so she understands what it's like to be misunderstood because she is disabled in a very different way to me, or in a very different way to my friends with ADHD, but she's accepting, she's inclusive, and she's absolutely quirky, and she's beautiful and wonderful, and she's been my friend for 4 years. And, it's a beautiful thing when you find people like that. But she's completely neurotypical. She doesn't have autism, she doesn't have ADHD, so she's entirely neurotypical in every sense of the word, other than the fact that she has a disability. That kind of makes her life challenging, has its own obstacles. But I laughed one day. We were talking, I remember, and I was like, "You're just an honorary neurodivergent," And she goes, "So what I'm hearing is that I am an honorary neurodivergent." I went, "Yep, welcome to the neurodivergent conversation," and she just goes with it. There's no judgment. There's no. There's no anger. There's no anything. If anything, she's wanted to learn more, and she wants to be a helpful ally to those who do have autism and other neurodivergencies. She's absolutely an ally and a good friend, and someone who even helps me understand things that maybe I might not quite see in the same way. And it's beautiful to have people like that in your life. So, she is one exception, so it's not that neurotypical people cannot be allies. It is just the fact that many of them don't want to listen and don't want to receive your perspective. And when they don't want to receive and they don't want to hear your perspective and they don't want to try to understand, that's what leads to problems. That's what leads to so many neurodivergents going, all these neurotypicals around me are saying this and this and this about me. And they don't like it when I unmask. And they don't like it when I'm myself. And they don't like it when I'm brutally honest. And they only find that I thrive and I succeed around people who have the same neurodivergency as me. And I can speak to that as being true. There were many neurotypical people and peers in my life who didn't understand me, and I had many teachers who were ableist towards me and who absolutely tried to take advantage of my autism and me being autistic. And those teachers I didn't get along with. Those peers I didn't get along with, and that's okay. They weren't meant to understand my neurodiversity. They weren't meant to understand that I'm autistic. They weren't meant to understand any of it. Doesn't mean that I don't value my relationship to them. They just don't understand. They will never understand. Didn't mean I didn't value the relationship when it was there. I tried to. But the disconnect is the fact that they don't understand me. So, and they weren't willing to try. All they saw was someone with autism who, in their mind, couldn't and wasn't giving them what they wanted in the way that they thought they needed it, rather than accepting the kinds of things that I do bring. And so I understand the frustration. I understand the frustration that so many neurodivergents express. Because it's like, look, you're not hearing, you're not listening, you're not receiving, you're not understanding. And until you finally sit down and you stop trying to fix, you stop trying to, you stop getting frustrated, you're never, 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 never going to see me for who I am and what I bring. You just won't. So most of my friends are neurodivergent in some way. And it's a rare exception if I have somebody who is more neurotypical in a lot of ways, who actually is a friend to me, because it just means you're a very, very, very rare exception to the rule, and that you're very much willing to listen and understand and maybe see that what I can bring might not be what you think I should be bringing, but what is needed and what I can do, and is equally as important. So that's a little bit about neurodiverse and neurotypical esque relationships. And there's a lot of talk about that. There's so much talk about neurotypical and autistic relationships, or neurotypical and and ADHD relationships, and they're often quite negative. And even now, like I'm saying, I've had my fair share of neurotypical people who looked at me and were bullies and were like, oh my gosh, you didn't do this and you didn't do that and you don't do this and you don't do that and blah 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 blah. Doesn't matter, because you're getting frustrated because you're not understanding my perspective. And I'm going to stop listening to you because I don't care anymore. Versus the neurodivergent relationships. And the neurodivergent relationships I've often had tend to be built on patience, understanding, and they thrive because we've accepted our neurodivergencies. My relationship with my friends who have ADHD would not be as thriving or as successful as they've been if I didn't understand that they had ADHD. And if they didn't understand that they had ADHD, they wouldn't have, it wouldn't work. There are times where me and my neurodivergent friends go weeks and weeks without talking. And it's not their fault. Doesn't mean they don't care. It just means that so much is happening that they're forgetting to text. I've had people look at me and go, "Oh my gosh, your relationships, they've got to be so one-sided." It was like, no, they're not. It just so happens that they have minds that tend to go a million miles a minute. And they'll admit themselves, yeah, we're terrible at communication. We're really bad at it. And I'm like, that's okay. I don't mind being the one that reaches out. And if you don't get back to me right away, I know you'll get back to me at some point. But you see, in a neurotypical relationship, or in a relationship with a neurotypical, that would indicate to some impatient, petty person, as most neurotypicals are, that you don't care, that you're not interested. They see it as blowing them off. I see it as you'll get back to me whenever you have a half a minute. Because relationships are so much more. At least the neurodivergent ones are. We have our common likes and interests and all the same things. It just so happens that when it comes to communication, we're either so busy with something that we take a little bit longer to get back to you, or we're so overwhelmed with everything else that we don't get back to you. And then we feel guilty about it. But, again, never has there been a time when I, having my neurodivergent friends, have ever had the thought that because they didn't get back to me right away, clearly they don't care. Oh my God. This must mean that I have to walk away from the friendship. This must mean that I have to stop reaching out. No, it doesn't, sweetheart. And the fact that you, again, cannot and will not look beyond that is a problem. It's just a problem. That's why, again, so many of us who are neurodivergent are so guarded, I think, when it comes to building our relationships. And it's why it's why I'm an advocate for neurodiversity, inclusion, acceptance, and understanding. Not just awareness, but acceptance, understanding, and complete and utter inclusion in all areas and all aspects of life. Because the more there is, the better off we'll all be. The more you understand that someone with ADHD has a brain that's going a million miles a minute, and sometimes just to focus, at how much focus and how much concentration it has got to take in order for them to be present in a moment, the amount of patience, you have no idea the amount of patience that is required in the relationships that I have. But they also have patience for me. And they also are loyal. And they're understanding. And they're kind. And they're funny. And they keep me honest. And they teach me things. Not naturally a patient person. But when you're in a neurodivergent relationship, when you're in a neurodiverse friendship and you have neurodivergent friends, that's kind of something that you're going to need. And most neurotypicals want it now. They want it now. Answer me right away. Do this thing right away. Don't forget this. Don't forget that. Why did you do it that way? I never told you to do it this way. Blah, 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 blah. Noise, 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 noise. Instead of adapting to our needs and the way we function. We adapt to your needs and the way you function. Or you want us to, and we can't. We just can't. We can try. It's not impossible, but it's not always going to fit your vision. It can't, it won't, it's impossible. The give and the take that you, so as neurotypicals, have and do is not the same give and take that we have. We don't function the same way you do. It's not a hard concept to grasp. It's not. The fact that you think it is very telling of the fact that, again, you're oppositional to us and the way that we perform in our daily life. And that's why neurodiversity, again, is so important. It's important that we advocate not only for those of us who are autistic, but that we advocate for our neurodivergent friends, those who have ADHD, those who have dyspraxia, dysgraphia, dyslexia. All of them. Every single one of them. Everyone who falls into your circle of neurodivergent friends, whether that circle is big or that circle is small. If your friends have things that you love and you value, you cherish that, you cherish them, and if little misunderstandings happen along the way, it's not a big deal. I've had several misunderstandings with many of my friends who have ADHD. Guess what? We step away, we breathe, we talk about it, and then we move on. Or if there's a miscommunication, I don't have to sit there and go, darn it. Why didn't you get this? I said this the first time. No, I don't do that. Because that's wrong. It was like, okay, clearly this is not coming across, so let me say it a different way. Oh, now I see. Yeah. Now it makes sense. It's not hard to find an alternative route to get the information to make sense. Instead of you getting angry, getting frustrated. Don't do that. My friends with ADHD apologize more than anyone I've ever known. And you want to know why? It's because the neurotypical world has taught them, as much as the neurotypical world has taught me, that if we don't do things your way, you will get mad. The natural response is anger. That's what happens. We've learned that's what happens. And so ultimately, we self-blame. We have self-doubts. We require more reassurance. We need to know that we can do it. We need to know we're capable. We need to feel that. Encouragement is the biggest ally to those who are neurodiverse. And compromise, while not easy, you need to be willing to have a couple of things. I know this podcast has gone in so many different directions during the entire time I've been talking. But all of this encompasses neurodiversity and its advocacy and the whole neurodiversity movement, and it all encompasses in every single way. It's all important. A few things. Let me tell you, as someone who is autistic and who has friends on varying levels of the ADHD spectrum, you need to be patient. You need to be kind. You need to be understanding. You need to listen. You need to be reassuring. You need to encourage. You need to listen. You need to have compassion. You need to don't focus in on the flaw, focus in on the strength. Focus in on what they can bring and bring that to their attention. Lift them up. Don't push them down. If they forget something, remind them. I've had to do that a lot. I often joke as the autistic of the group, I'm like, I am your walking post-it note. Hey, how about this thing you were supposed to do? When's that? Oh, I forgot about that. I'm like, it's okay. Go ahead and maybe check in with that. That's important. Get invested in them. Let them info dump to you. They're not monopolizing a conversation. They're actually excited to talk about something with you. Tell them that you value their opinion and be genuine about it. I've had several, friends of mine be like, "Oh no, I don't know if I can talk about this because I don't know if I can really contribute much because maybe you wanna hear it from this source," and I'm like, "No, I want to hear it from you because I value you. I'm not looking for anybody else. I want to hear from you. You're what I value." Tell them you value them. Be genuine. Be real. Be honest. Receive what they have to say. Hear them out. They might know more than you. It's not that hard. And that's not just for those who have ADHD, but that's those who are autistic. I have autistic colleagues and friends. Listen to them. My favorite memory of my friend Mara. I talked about Mara before. Like she was so nervous talking to new people, and she was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I get so nervous talking to new people." And I was like, "Well, that's okay. You can just talk to me, and I'll listen." And I talked to her, and I let her, and she would stumble and fumble over her words, but the more she got to know me, and the more she was around me, the more she became more comfortable around me, to the point that her parents no longer came up to the little youth center and wouldn't just drop her off, like physically walk up and drop her off. They wouldn't come in anymore. Actually, the minute they saw me, she would jump out of the car, run to me, and run up to me and give me the biggest hug. Because again, somebody was looking out for her. Somebody loved Mara. I did. I do. I love my friends with ADHD. I love my friends with autism. And I love them for who they are. And I don't mind them if they have some things that could be considered flaws and imperfections. It doesn't matter. Bottom line to this whole thing, to end this podcast, is stop trying to fit autistics, ADHDers, and the whole of the neurodivergent community into a box that you neurotypicals can understand and fix. Because the minute you stop trying to do that is the minute relationships with us will improve. But if you keep trying to fit us into a box and you keep trying to fix things that don't need to be fixed, you will never, 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 and I mean never, see what we can do. And that is the bottom line truth. Break your beliefs about what you think is the norm, because you're hurting other people when you refuse to understand that we will never fit into the vision that you think is correct. We never will. You do more damage than good when you try to fit us into a box we'll never fit into. And with that, I'm Faith Jacobs. Thank you for listening to Coffee Break.